What's going on, everyone? This is Alex Quin, and you're listening to the Hustle Inspires Hustle podcast. On today's episode, we have Daniel Kasidi, founder and CEO of Rastaclat. What's up, bro?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on, man. I'm really excited.
Yeah, man. Well, I've been checking out all your stuff. I've been checking out your interviews. I've been checking out, the company culture at your business. I've been checking out everything, just getting to know you and really, really cool stuff, man. We have friends in common, so that was pretty cool. We got a chance to connect online, got a chance to learn about your business and vice versa. And I've been looking forward to this episode, man.
Yeah, likewise, man. I love what you guys do and just the message you guys are putting out there for entrepreneurs. I mean, it's great to be on and be able to shed any sort of insight or perspective. It's a long journey in entrepreneurship, and if I could ever help anyone, sidestep some of the potholes, that's my mission in life is to be able to sort of pay it forward. So I'm happy to be here and deliver any value that I can.
Yeah, man. And there's a whole fuckload of potholes on the journey to success. So everybody has to understand that. And your journey, man, started at 5 years old when you came to the States from Kenya, man. Let's hear a little bit about your life.
Yeah, so I was born in Kenya, which is right on the equator, east coast of Africa. I'm the youngest of three. My parents were educated. My dad was an agricultural engineer as well as my mom. And at a young age, they decided that they wanted to have us as kids get a education from America. So they fundraised. I remember I was 5 years old. We'd throw like barbecues on Sundays, and people would come over and people would put money in the pot and it was kind of like the original GoFundMe. It was just like that's how they did it. And it took about a year. They raised enough money. And next thing we knew, I was announcing to my first grade class that I was moving to America. And I didn't really know what that meant, but just everyone's response was such a great deal of like, happiness. And like, I felt that I sort of understood at that point that I was like one of a few and it wasn't something that everyone gets to do.
Yeah.
So I kind of was, so next thing you know, I'm hopping on a plane, and the next thing that I'm seeing is, the LA freeways, and it was just a culture shock, coming from Africa, and then, being in a completely different place. People don't necessarily look like you, the world is just different. And so it was great. It was a really cool experience. And being 5 years old was the right timing because you're kind of you're a little bit more moldable. You can like just kind of adapt really quickly. So it was a really perfect timing for me.
Yeah, man. And you really jumped right in. I mean, you got here at 5, but by your teenage years, you're already moving. And that I could relate a lot to that because middle school, high school, I was doing whatever I had to do, selling shirts, snacks, candy, whatever I had to do to, just make some money. And I had an entrepreneurial spirit. And I saw that you started skateboarding as a teenager, which ultimately led to your brand Rastaclat and what it is today.
Yeah.
You started skateboarding as a teenager. You got sponsored by a local shop, and then had to deal with a shoe company, and things started evolving from there. How did that take place?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a teenager, I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to be on the football team. I wanted to do all those things, but because my mom wasn't really ingrained with the American culture and how you sort of raise kids in this country and put them in those sports, it just wasn't a priority for her. But I think that was something that I wanted to like be a part of, and I wanted to be part of sports, but I kind of had to take matters into my own hands. I was like, you know what, skateboarding is that one thing. Everyone was doing it in my neighborhood, and it was that one thing that my mom didn't have to like, shell out a lot of money for. I could borrow like a part of the skateboard from all different friends and put one together. I didn't have to get taken to a arena or a coach or spend any money on it. I could just do it, every day on my own. So I really gravitated towards that, and it was also something that I enjoyed. I was kind of, a little bit of a not a loner, but I was kind of reclusive as a kid, and I probably still am today to a certain sense. And so skateboarding was great because it was like my own game, and I everything leaned on me wanting to become great. And I took the approach of skateboarding. It was fun. A lot of people did it for fun, but I was doing it to like, get up the ranks. And so I started skateboarding when I was 15, and about 2.5 years later, I was getting shoe sponsors and skate shop sponsors and clothing sponsors. This is like 1998, 2000, right? This is before like influencers and things were, a thing on social media. I was that micro influencer of my city that people look up to. And so these companies saw value in that and, started sending me products. And that really led to me like falling in love with like fashion, because I started like, putting all my clothing together and things like that. And I was always just been creative, and one day just out of creativity decided to sort of weave a bracelet together out of an extra pair of shoelaces from one of the shoe sponsors. And I went to school the next day, and I didn't think anything of it, to be quite honest with you. It was just something that I did for self-expression. And little would I know, like 10 of my buddies would be like, "Hey, Daniel, can you make me one of those bracelets? I wanted to match my hat, or this, I wanted this color." And I was like, my entrepreneurial light went on, and I was like, yeah, let's do that. And I'll bring it to you tomorrow. So I went home and I made the bracelets, and, the next day I go to school and I gave it to my friends, and every single person came back to me with a story of, newfound confidence. Like, hey, somebody noticed me, or I'm inspired by your creativity. Like something positive happened, which gave me like this weird sense of, not really weird, but this sense of like self-worth, because I was like 17 at that time. And it was, it really felt good to make someone else feel good, but it made me feel good too. And that's really the why I kept doing it. But at that point, it was just kind of like a hobby business. It's like, when you're a kid and you're selling these are t-shirts or candy or whatever. I didn't know how to like scale it into a company. I had no resources. I had no mentors. I just kind of was like, man, I don't know what to do with this. It was pretty popular. I mean, the first day I sold 10, the second day 20, 40. I think I might have sold about 5,000 of these bracelets, in just my junior and senior year. But I couldn't really build a business from that. And so that was the original stages of Rastaclat. And I think what's magical about it is we found our what and our why. I kind of encapsulated that what and why in that first 48 hours. Like, I realized that the product was a bracelet, but the why was how it made people feel. And I made a decision at that point, like I wanted to scale that emotion of positivity and that energy. And so, yeah, that's really where the concept of Rastaclat started. It wasn't like a full business at that point. It was just sort of a teenage sort of idea in a sense.
It's crazy. Like I try to find common denominators with the guests on the podcast and everybody that I'm just connecting with. And, the listeners want to know, what are the successful actions I need to take, or what are the things I need to do, or what are patterns that you usually find? And I recently had one of my good buddies, Lee from MPH Club. And before he started the exotic car rental company down here in Miami, he did a few things, right? He had a few other businesses. But during high school, man, I believe he was a junior or senior in high school, and he had a moving company. So he would go to school, check in with school, leave at a certain period, go to his office, open the office up, lead like 20 employees, and then go back to high school. And maybe you don't have a huge company in high school, because that's extremely rare scenario. But like, look at your situation. You were flipping these bracelets in high school. I was flipping bracelets in high school. I would go to Colombia, which is my native country. I would buy them. They would probably cost me like 70 cents to $1 a bracelet. I would buy all the different colors. I would come to school. I would be rocking like 2 or 3 of them. Everybody would want them. I would sell them for like $10. I would make 10 times my investment. And then I would come 3 days later with another color on my wrist. And then they'd be like, wait, you got orange now? You got red now? Yeah, these are the new ones. And then they would just continue to buy. So, that's how I bought my lunch. That's how I paid for my cell phone bill. That's how I did different things that were important to me. But sometimes you don't know where things are going to go, man. You were sitting waiting for your friend to pick you up one day that he was late. And you started messing around with your shoestrings and you made a bracelet out of it. And next thing you know, you're selling a bunch of bracelets to people in school. And then it ends up being the company that you're working in now. You never know how early or how late you're gonna run into what you love doing, which is extremely important. But I did run into a few things that I kind of wanted to fill in the gap on the timeline. I saw that you worked at Levi's and you worked a little bit with Disney, if I'm not mistaken. At one point did that happen?
Yeah, so, I kind of had that stint in high school where I'm, like you said, hustling these bracelets in a sense. And it's funny, we have a similar story and business model in high school. That's amazing. But, shortly after that, I kind of got to a point where I realized, like, I don't really know how to run a business. I don't have any examples of how to run a business. Why don't I take I built relationships with the sponsors that I had, and I was like, well, why don't I take a job with one of these sponsors? So I started doing sales. I signed up for East Coast sales rep, and I was selling footwear to all these skate shops in the East Coast. And, I had outside reps. And so I started working and, on the sales side of it. And then after I had the sales job, I got a design job at Levi's and Disney, and I was doing tech packs and fittings and designing apparel. And, through that experience, I really got a chance to like work with a lot of great people, whether it's from marketing to sales to product development, all these things. And the entire time I'm just like, I still have like this idea in my mind that I want to launch one day, but I'm literally just gaining experience and learning from every single person, being so curious and building relationships with every single job that I had. So there was a period from when I graduated high school and kind of stopped sort of the hobby business, if you will, and went to school at FITM, studied apparel manufacturing and business admin, and then graduated and then worked for about 4 years before I actually started the Rastaclat brand, which was in 2010. So that was my journey, was kind of like the idea in high school, about 7 years of apprenticeship and working and learning. And then, eventually quitting that job at Levi's as a designer and starting the Rastaclat business. When I'd gotten to a point where I was like, man, I have the acumen, I have the resources, I have the connections. I had a $4,000, tax return check that I had gotten. And I was like, this is what I'm going to invest in my business, And so, at that point I was about 27, 28, and I decided to put all that money into the Rastaclat business, and, working 40 hours a week at Levi's and then putting in 40 hours a week developing this brand for about a year before I kind of like started developing sales and, I got all the products in and everything like that. So that was really that journey, that gap, in between, but I never lost that fire and that idea.
Yeah, and I think it's really important because, I usually see two ways, right? Somebody either right from a young age just jumps into the business, deals with all the mistakes, like the potholes we talked about at the beginning, all the roadblocks, or somebody recognizes that maybe they need a little bit of experience. They put themselves through an educational process that we were always educating ourselves, but through an initial educational process and then getting experience with other brands. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that if you want to be a professional, if you want to start a brand, you need to give yourself the experience, because a lot of the times we think we know everything, but we really don't know what we don't know, and that's where the details are. That's where things could get a little bit crazy, because if you don't know the details in every single aspect of your business, that's when things start to get a little bit shaky. And once you're on the ground with your boots on the ground, you start actually realizing what you got to do and how do you got to react and pivot to different situations.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of going about it. I mean, my experience at FITM and learning the industry, like I literally dodged a lot of potholes that I would have if I would have just jumped in and done it on my own. And we're also living in a different time. Like right now, you can jump on social media, scale an e-commerce business pretty quickly. You have all the mentors that you could DM and find at a click, just typing into the search there. And then, at least post pre-pandemic, money was really cheap. You can go out there and you can fundraise and get investors, I'm not saying easily, but these are things that today, 20 years later are at the tip of your fingers, versus when I started, they weren't. You had to like really have a methodical way of going about it. But yeah, I think there's different ways of doing it, and it's just understanding what resources you have. I think if I were to do it again and have the resources that I have today, or we've had in the last 10 years, I may have just gone straight. I would have taken that idea from high school and just started an e-commerce site and just taken it and ran with there. So everyone's got a different path. It's also about timing, so all those things come into play. And so yeah, like you're right, there's definitely more than one way to skin the cat.
And yeah, and not only that, so you find yourself getting all this experience, let's say in apparel, in sales, in retail, right, and design, and then you find yourself building this company where there's online sales, and now it's more than just the product. Now it's the videos. How are we presenting the brand? There's the PR, there's the copywriting, there's the web design, there's the logo design, there's the email sequences, the text messages, the messenger, the retargeting, getting through to your audience, making sure you're getting your message across, making sure you're staying relevant, making sure you're keeping up with everything that's going on in the world. And not only that, remaining original, right? Because as you're creating, there's people that are getting inspired by what you're doing, and then they start creating similar content, and then it starts becoming, repetitive. So then you gotta be always at the cusp of what's new. And that's also something that people need to give themselves time for in business, is not always operations. It's sometimes take a little bit of time to think, write down, shape out how things will look. What is your customer journey like? When they land on your site, what are they seeing? What are they seeing after? What kind of content are you putting in front of them? How are you framing them? And then how are you giving them a quality product? Are you actually delivering on what you're talking about? These are elements of business that people tend to overlook. And clearly you guys haven't, due to the fact that you guys have been able to scale so much, due to the fact that you guys concentrate so much in company culture. You have a staff of about how much right now? Like about 40?
About 40 people, and you're absolutely right. It's like, the operational piece comes into play, but you're really having that vision of what your brand represent, what's your brand promise, and how are you going to deliver that through your customer journey. And you talked about all those different channels that you can reach your customer and be consistent and also continue to innovate, but stay true to your why and your brand promise. And yeah, that's the never ending sort of puzzle that you're putting together. What it was last year is different than this year with the pandemic, and you've got to figure out how to repackage things that you do while staying authentic and staying true to your North Star. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's crucial.
As a marketer, as a business owner, not only marketer, because you're in the world of business, you start noticing change. And when the whole pandemic came out and we were dealing with all this, we still are, but when it was still fresh, and I was seeing all the companies switch around their business models. Like I remember I got a chance to do a few projects with Sixt Rent-A-Car through the marketing agency. And I remember as soon as the pandemic hit, they started offering like leases on their cars, right? For weekly rates or bi-weekly rates or monthly rates. If a billion-dollar company like Sixt could go and switch those things that fast and create a different offer, then anybody should be able to, because they got a lot more risk than people that are maybe just starting out. And if you're just starting out your business, or your business is very young and you have to deal with the pandemic, don't be discouraged, because there's sure people that had to take way bigger risk and had a lot more to lose than probably you do right now. And like Daniel's saying, you have Instagram, you have LinkedIn, you have Twitter, you have social media. Find like-minded people. Find like-minded people that you have synergy with, that you could learn from each other. Like Daniel and I didn't know much of each other up until a few weeks ago, but we got a chance to connect. We found some synergy. We had some things in common in high school. We've both been building brands, and we both learned a little bit from each other during this conversation, and we'll sure to be able to walk away and implement a few things or be able to think differently. And that's what it's about. If you're home or wherever you are right now and it doesn't seem like you have things lined up, that's fine. That's usually where we all start, right? Daniel didn't start with an extremely successful business. He started with making a bracelet out of shoestrings, probably sitting outside his house or sitting inside his house, and it developed into something incredible as long as he stayed consistent. And that's what it's about. Remain consistent through difficult times, find excellent mentors, educate yourself, read the right books, whatever your industry may be. We're talking about marketing and online sales right now, but whatever it is that you do, educate yourself, talk to the top people, talk to the thought leaders, buy yourself some really good books about it, and really get to learn. Daniel, let me ask you, bro, what books have impacted your life, or what kind of content do you like to consume that keeps you motivated?
Yeah, I go through different phases. Sometimes I'm watching documentaries. Sometimes I'm listening to audiobooks. I think some books that have been great for me in terms of business have been Play Bigger has been a pretty big one for me that I really enjoyed. There's a lot of them out there. I've read countless books, and so I'm also listening to podcasts and learning from other people, because for me, reading books is great, but I love learning from people's experiences and talking to people and getting out there and kind of doing that. So podcasts, books, I'm constantly reading. I'm subscribing to a lot of the newsletters, business newsletters, marketing newsletters. I'm on webinars learning about what's going to happen at this election. I'm learning about what impact that has on business, what impact that has on how we can market. So you've got to really create sort of an ecosystem of education that you can kind of navigate through at all times. And sometimes you get sick and tired of listening to an audiobook, then okay, jump on that webinar, or okay, go to that networking event and talk to someone. So different forms of learning that kind of align with where you're at, at one time, because you just can't keep reading books all the time. I mean, some people can, but not for me. I got to mix it up a little bit and find different ways to educate myself. But those are some of the ways that I do it.
Yeah, and it's also not just like reading a fuckload of books, because you got to read and then implement, right? Or you got to listen and watch, then implement, and then A/B test and see what's working for you. Because what are you going to do with all that knowledge if you're not putting it to action, right? I remember I remember I went to Bali like last year. I spoke at a conference. It was really impactful for me because I met a lot of great people and I went with a lot of great people. And I remember meeting this guy that introduced me to Audible. I didn't even know about Audible back then. And he's like, "Yeah, get Audible. Like the author is literally reading the book. You could listen to it. You could slow it down. You could speed it up." And it was different for me because at the time I wasn't really into reading physical books. I didn't want to carry a book around. For me, it wasn't just that exciting. So I was like, "All right, I like listening to stuff. Let me try to listen to a book." And I listened to two books. One of them being The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. That was a fantastic book. And then I listened to another book called Never Split the Difference, which was recommended by a buddy of mine, Jeremy. So I read that. I listened to the book. It was really impactful. It was written by Chris Voss. He was an international FBI hostage negotiator, and then he started a consulting firm to help big firms on closing big deals. I listened to the book. I took action on the book. We closed some really big deals through implementing the strategies of the book through my agency. Everybody on the team actually read the book, and then we had him on the podcast. So we sat down. We had a great conversation. We had a 2-episode series here on Hustle Inspires Hustle. And it was different for me because I got the chance to listen to the book, and then I had the chance to actually sit down face to face and talk to that person about elements of the book that were important to me or were important to my team. And yeah, it goes with what you were saying. Sometimes it's really great to just sit down and talk to that person face to face and feel that synergy and feel that experience. So podcasting is great, guys. Podcasting, books, audiobooks, webinars, YouTube videos, articles online, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, private mastermind groups. Find people like you. They're out there. You're not by yourself. There's billions of us, and we're getting together in different online communities.
Yeah, and Alex, I have a similar story. That book that I was talking about, Play Bigger. As I was reading it, and actually I listened to it probably about 3 or 4 times. And as you're reading it, some of these books, it's really a curriculum, right? It's really taking the notes and then making sure you're following through and like following the process. That book's really great at like building categories, right? Like let's say you wanted to build a category of, new kind of cup, right? Like what's that process of building that category? Who are the category kings? What's your point of view going to be? How are you going to release that category? Who are the PR partners that are going to be part of that ecosystem? It goes through so much information, and when you start to like really drill it down, you can take that information and then disseminate it to your team and have everyone start to execute on it. And like you said, it has a huge impact on your business if you implement some of these things. So it isn't just reading the books to read the books, say you read the books. It's about implementing that knowledge and then, having that impact on your business and the people in your business.
Yeah, guys, if you didn't fully catch what he meant about categories, I want to go ahead and clarify, at least from my point of view and how I've been perceiving that. What he means by category is what do you do? For example, I'm a marketer. I'm a digital marketer, okay? Daniel has a company that sells custom bracelets, right? Not necessarily custom, but custom design bracelets that do have licenses with NBA, MLB, Olympics, different things that you guys come up with. What you need to do is you need to define your category. What do you do and who are the leaders in that category? What are they already doing? What are their unique selling propositions? What are their values? What are their company core values, their features, their benefits? You want to learn more about how to take over a category or become a leader in a category. There's several things you could do. You could study companies like Rastaclat. You could read books. You could go on YouTube. There's some really, really great books. One of them is actually sitting in front of me. It's actually funny that we're talking about this. I don't know if you've read this, Daniel. 22 Immutable Laws of Branding.
No, I gotta jump on that.
This one's going to blow your mind. You're talking about categories. This will blow your mind. This is a really good one. This is actually written by two advertising agency owners. Yeah, so pretty cool. Dad and daughter, they run a really cool advertising agency. They have another book called Visual Hammer. Really cool for copywriters and marketers. So yeah, like guys, you see that we have successful businesses. We both do. But we don't stop, right? We continue to read. We continue to connect with other people. Daniel's busy. He has a bunch of shit going on, but he finds the time to get on a podcast, share his experience, learn a little bit, spread a little bit of his message, and then continue about his day. And that's what it's about. You never stop learning. Just because maybe you finish high school or you feel like you're about to finish college and then you never have to study again or be on top of shit again. You got to forget about it because you're going to be studying the rest of your life. The smarter you get, the easier you could overcome all the obstacles that are going to come your way.
I'd argue I learn at a faster, more crazy pace at this point in my 30s than I ever had even when I was in school, between elementary, junior high, high school, and even college. They're learning at such a higher pace. And that's what it requires. You gotta keep doing it. So yeah, I agree with you in that sense.
Bro, where can we connect with you? Like we're gonna we always line up everything on the show notes. So if you really like the conversation, you could go on the landing page, hustleinspireshustle.com/podcast and find Daniel Kasidi's episode, or whatever platform you're listening on right now. Make sure to check out the show notes. But just in case, Daniel, let us know where we can find you, man.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's one of the best places, Daniel.Kasidi, Kasidi. Go ahead and shoot me a DM if you guys have any questions. Would love to give you guys any insight. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Just search Daniel Kasidi. You can find Rastaclat on @Rastaclat on Instagram, RASTACLAT, or our website. Again, our products are really meant to spread positivity and remind you of that mindset of positivity. So, go on there and check it out and, buy one for yourself or a gift for someone else.
Absolutely, guys. Make sure to check that out. Make sure to implement some of the things that we've talked about today. We're really grateful to have you guys as an audience. We are 95 countries strong as of today. We've been out for a year and continuing to grow. Guys, this is Alex Quin, Daniel Kasidi, Hustle Inspires Hustle podcast. See you on the next episode.
Peace.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Hustle Inspires Hustle podcast. I'd appreciate it if you could share, leave a review, and subscribe to the show. Visit hustleinspireshustle.com